Hi, welcome to the Angular session. Yesterday we have seen, I have revised the directives and we have seen the data sharing, how two components will share the data. Today, that is 2nd of July 2024, time is this, we will see the dependency injection. We might need a couple of sessions to cover this, but we will see this dependency injection. So when you talk about the dependency injection, let's create the project first and then we will see. This is the React project. CD web dev Angular. Day 56, day 57, day 57, nvm use, oh, I already have done this thing, no problem. New di app, dependency injection. CSS we would be using. Server side rendering we don't need. Presently you don't need what's the server side rendering. Whenever you want to do optimization of the JavaScript apps like React or Angular, you need one technique that your or this is one example, or if you want to work on the load time of the page, you need to give a pre-loaded page to the bot or to the client. That's what the server-side rendering is in short. But forget about it right now. Just focus on the core concepts of Angular DI app. Dependency injection. Can you tell me what do you mean by dependency injection? When you say dependency injection, understanding the DI. Now, dependency injection or the DI is one of the fundamental concept in Angular, highly important concept. Okay, there is pen. Yeah. So when you say dependency injection is a fundamental concept in Angular. DI is wired into the Angular framework and allows classes with Angular decorators such as component, directive, pipes, injectables to configure the dependencies that they need. So this is a built-in whenever you write the add component. Okay, this is the React, just a minute. Web dev Angular. Yeah. So whenever you say add component, let me delete these unwanted files. Routing presently we don't need. This is also DI. Whatever you can see here, that's the DI actually. So app component, yeah. So whenever you attach any of the annotation like or decorator, I'm sorry, annotation in Java, decorator in the TypeScript, Angular decorators such as component, directives, pipes, injectables to configure that they need. DI is wired into the Angular framework You don't need to do any special thing. It's a part of the Angular and allows the classes with these decorators to configure the dependencies that they need. Now, what do you mean by dependencies? So here yeah, here this is a car class and this is the engine class. Car class and the engine class. Car and what? Engine. So technically in the object oriented modeling and design, we say car is dependent on engine. Means what? So I can create the class car and class engine. Class car and class engine. But in a constructor, if you want to create the object of the car, you should provide first object of the engine. You should provide first object of the engine. So here, if you try to create the object of car, here we can say const cr is equals to new car, you will get an error over here. You will get an error. You cannot create object of car until you provide the object of engine. Const en is nothing but what? Engine. And here we can pass en, engine. New is missing. New engine. So if you want to create the object of car, you need to provide object of engine. Okay, that's what the principle of the dependency injection. So car is dependent on the engine, and this list can be, so here we can say plug, engine is dependent on the plug, plug is dependent on current, right? So here engine is dependent on plug and plug is dependent on current. Like this. Now can you see, if you want to create the object of engine, if you want to create the object of engine, you need to create, if you want to create object of engine, you need to create object of plug. If you want to create object of plug, you need to first create object of, you need to create the object of current. And this may presently I'm taking example of 3-4 objects, but in real there might be, let's create the hierarchy, new plug, here you need to pass the plug, const crn is equals to new current, here you can pass the crn. So presently, for example, we have taken only 2-3 level of the hierarchy, but in reality there might be lot of things there. There might be a lot of things there, and you need to worry about lot of objects and the dependencies. You need to do this thing manually, and if there is a dynamic object creation available over there in between, Presently you are doing new, but something, a method is generating the object and providing to you. That would be real challenge. And that's why a framework should support the dependency injection to you, right? Dependency injection to you. Two main roles exist in the DI: dependency consumer and dependency provider. Angular facilitates the interaction between the dependency consumers and the dependency provider using an abstraction called as injector. Abstraction means you don't need to worry how things are happening internally. When a dependency is requested, the injector checks the registry to see if their instance is available there. If not, a new instance is created and stored in the registry. If not, the new instance is created and stored in the registry. Angular creates the application-wide injector, also known as the root injector. If new instance is created and stored in the registry, if not, a new instance is created and stored in the registry. Angular creates the application-wide injector. Who is creating the dependencies? Injector. Do not forget that what's the injector is. So Angular is having one mechanism over there, something called as injector. What injector does? It provides the dependencies. It takes care of creating object of the dependencies. Angular facilitates the interaction between the consumers and the providers using an abstraction called as injector. When the dependency is requested, the injector checks the registry. This guy will check the registry if the car is there or engine is there. If it is not, the instance would be created and stored in the registry. Angular creates the application-wide injector, also known as the root injector. So Angular gives you this by default injector, a root injector. During the application bootstrap process, you don't need to do anything. In most of the cases, you don't need to manually create the injectors, but there are some scenarios. Let's not talk about that right now. But you should know that there is a layer that connects to the providers and the consumers, that is injector. Okay. So this topic covers the scenarios, how a class can act as a dependency. Angular allows you to use the functions, objects, primitive types, strings, or any other dependencies. So we will see how do you provide the dependencies. Now, if you want, let's create a service. Let's create a service or a file. Let's create a class. We can create, okay, first I will do it in, actually not required. You can fire the command nggs and name of the thing. And generally these things are called as service. So here we can say DNS query. We are going to make
TGS S means service.
nggs. Yeah, S means
service.
Yeah.
So using this dependency injection, I mean we are creating a service.
Yeah. I'll show you that. Just a minute. I'll show you that. So first,
service.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Just hold on. Export class. So I want to connect to the DNS server, right? I want to connect to the DNS server, and I want to find out some names of my IP addresses, right? I need to do this job. DNS query service. So you ask, what is a service? So remember one thing, Angular, the presentation is done by component. Processing is done by a utility class called as service. There is no UI, just data. And the formatting of the UI is done by the pipes. So anything connecting to the DB REST APIs service. You want to connect to the Bitcoin server, there is a service. You want to store the data in a local storage, there is a service. Service will process the data and process the data given to the component. If you want to format the process data, that data is given to the pipe, and pipe will format the data, and component will present the data. So components are presenters, services are processors, pipes are formatters. Okay, so we are doing this thing. Now if you want to process something and give it to the component, which means that component is dependent on this guy for processing. It is really bad idea to write your data processing in this class. It is bad idea to do the processing in this class. Responsibility of this class is the presentation. Just presentation. So processing, another layer. So the things which do the processing is nothing but what? Your service. Okay. So you can attach at injectable. What is at injectable? Angular gives you the injector. In this case, this is consumer, this is provider. Angular gives you a injector at the time of the bootstrap. And if you want Angular to handle the dependencies on your behalf, you need to annotate the classes. You need to decorate the classes. With what? You can decorate at component, at directive, at pipe, add injectables, and other things. Angular DI is wired into the Angular framework and allows classes with Angular decorators. So if you want to provide the class, consider a class a hero service, needs to act as a dependency in a component. First step is to add the injectable. Right? A decorator show that the class can be injected. Now, what do you mean by injected? Here first I can inject the class private DNS. Here I can say DNS query service. Okay, if I do this thing, DNS query service, server is not running, npm start localhost 4200, and you'll get an error. Null injector, no provider for DNS service. It is saying that I am not getting any provider. Again, the definition: Angular facilitates the interaction between the dependencies, dependency consumers, and the dependency providers using the injector. When the dependency is requested, injector checks the registry if instance is already available there. If not, new instance is created and stored in the registry. Angular creates application-wide injector, also known as the root injector. Okay, and root injector during bootstrap process. In the most cases, you don't need to manually create the injectors, but you should know that there is a layer between providers and consumers. If app component wants to use this DNS query service, first this object of this needs to be provided. Presently, no one is providing the object. Okay. If you read this thing, application wide injector, also known as the root injector. Either you can provide it in a root, see, preferred way at the application root level, providing at the application root level, or at the component root level. Application, you can provide it at the component level, you can provide at the application level, or application root level using the application config class. If there is an ng module, in an ng module also we can provide it. Now go here, let's talk about these three ways. Now this error would be getting resolved if you do a basic thing over here, provided in the root injector, provided in true or root, see here, and the error will disappear. There is no error. Application level, you have provided, so this service is available for all the components in the application. If you wanna don't do that thing, and if you wanna do it at the component level, and here you can say DNS query service, still there is no error. But if you don't provide anywhere, you'll get an error. Either you can provide at service level, sorry, application level, here or here. Either at the places, or same thing, same if you want to provide it at the root, go to the app config file here, and now can you see provide router? What do you mean by the provide router? It is the object of router provider. In the same fashion, you can provide your dependency. Yeah, can you see providers, application config? Can you see providers? Providers means what? The guy who provides the objects DNS query service. And your application again working. Writing over here. So you got to know what the meaning of the provider, and that's why you don't need the app module file, because this is working at the same level. But all these are not recommended ways, right? This is not recommended way. A recommended way is to provide over here. Add injectable, and here provided in root. That's it. Application level, and component level. It is nothing but about this three things. So in the ng module also, there is a providers array. This array is there in the app module also. You can either write into that the providers. Okay. Now injecting and the consuming. Can you see? So here we have consumed the dependency. Where is the app component? Here. You have consumed the dependency. So here we can write the code to make the DNS query. So here You can write the code, say, here I can say, to name, which is returning the string, and I am passing the IP. Something like this we can make. Something like this we can make. And from here we can return some string. Okay. And this can be used in this way in here, and then we can write DNS, not DOM sanitizer. Okay, DNS dot to name, I can pass 0.0.0.0. I need to know the name of this thing. You can write this code very easily, not a big deal. Injecting or consuming the dependency. Correct? This is one way. Same thing can be done if you don't want to do in this way. Same thing can be done private or DNS inject, and here you can say DNS query service, and here we can say this dot DNS, so there is no error, right? There is no error. So either let's return something, say all IP. Okay, app component console.log, this guy, all IP. If I comment this thing and if you do this thing, still you get the all IP, one and same. Okay, so we created the service. Now, say creating the injectable service. When you say same thing, whatever we have done, we have put it into the component. Yeah, now this is also one more idea over here. So we created the service, DNS query service, we injected over here, two ways of injecting like this. Now DNS service is dependent on your network service. I can say, let's create this service this time using the Angular CLI, nggs network service. Hit the enter. It will create the network service. Can you see automatically provided in root, and here it can say connect to Wi-Fi. I'm gonna write this code. Here I can say SSID, it's string. Here we can give console.log connected to this SSID. Okay, now I have one more service. Say Bluetooth service .ts, and this Bluetooth service, this BT service is dependent on DNS service also. I can inject over here. Can you see DNS dot DNS query service? Also, this is dependent on network service, network service. And here we can import private BT service, right? See, this code is working. There is no error. There are no errors. Now, if one service needs to be injected, can you see? DNS query is a service, network is a service. If the BT service wants to get connected to, if the BT service is dependent on the DNS query service and the network service, both of them, if I remove this guy, and can you see there is an error? Can you see there is an error? If, which means that the same thing. If you want Angular to provide the dependency, decorators are must. What decorators? Add component, add directive, add pipe, and whatever. All that things are must. Injecting a service into the another service. So that's what we have seen here. Logger service. In the hero service, we have a network service, we have a BT service, which is having both other services. Okay. Now, just a minute. This is it for the day. Let's not go jump ahead and cover these topics. These are little advanced topics, but you should first what do you mean by this use class, use as this existing, use factory, use value? We'll talk about that little bit later on. But these are the fundamentals of the service. Now, yesterday we have taken one example. Right, I'll head back to the yesterday's code. Day 56, data share. So I want you to think in the terms of this data share. How can you use service over here? So here is your range component. This is the range component. This is the text component. So it was emitting the data that is getting assigned to one of the variable in the parent, and that variable was input to this text component, and this is the range component. So you are emitting the event that is assigning to one variable. That variable was input to this thing. Now, if you are gonna use a service, this, I want you to try this. Create one service over here, inject that service into this component, inject same service into this component. On range change, right? Call the function inside this. Call the function inside this. Update one variable inside service and pass that variable to this thing. If you can do this thing, this is the best it is not good approach right now, because you have something called as signals. A next topic, if you see, that is about the signals, right? So whatever I said right now about this variable, presently just keep this a primitive type normal variable number. But once we learn the signals, it would be signal. Now, what is signal? Forget about it right now. But without signal also you can do this thing. So on the range, change this number inside the service and render that number over here. Can you do that? Hello? Just give a try
Yeah.
for this.
Aniruddha, it is quite difficult for me. I mean, I need to read on it. Absolutely, it is very difficult to understand at this stage.
I got it. No problem. I will do this thing, right? Shall I do it now, or you wanna try, think on yourself? This is the architecture. Service injected into range component, injected into this. At least give a try.
Service means just as name service. What is that? I mean, ask this question to you. Service means some particular code which provides some
Okay.
facility. I mean,
Just a minute. I'll write the service. Data sharing service. Sharing. So we created the service, a DNS query service, right? A network service, a BT service. So they will actually go and get the DNS. So whenever you are going to the DNS server and getting the DNS back, it is nothing related to UI. Yes or no? Going to the server and coming back with the data, it has nothing to do with the UI. So service is any class, or forget about it. If the name is conflicting, they just say conventionally it's a service, but I can say abc.ts also. So here I can say class abc, right? Then I can attach at injectable. Why service? We call it as it is coming from the object oriented principles and modeling, but not necessary it's a name should be service. I have written abc class, so this is also service. So I can inject this guy in, const, or see a sharing.
the just
Yeah.
earlier file abc.ts.
Uh-huh.
What is that provider? They are, I mean, they are predefined words.
Yeah, this is a predefined. You cannot write anything over here.
So you are specifying like this is the root, something like this.
Just a
I
minute.
don't understand this.
Yeah, I have read this thing couple of times for that only.
Yeah, but
If you see this thing here, when dependency is requested, the injector checks the registry. If there an instance already available there, if returns that instance. If not, the instance gets created and stored in the registry. Angular creates the application wide injector. See, application wide injector, also known as what? The root injector, registry. So application level, you are storing the object of ABC. Provided in root means what? At the application level, we are storing, at the application level, we are storing the object of ABC, right?
it is accessible across all the components.
All the components, correct. All the
Okay.
components, directives, anywhere.
I mean, this is the way that you are declaring like this class ABC
Huh. Yeah,
is a service.
is a service. You can say service. Traditionally, we call it as a service, but no need to call it as a service. No need to call it as a service. So,
And this will perform some action.
huh.
So that's why it is a provider.
Correct.
And some other consumer can take a benefit of this
Huh.
I will use this service
Uh-huh.
for their purpose,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, explain.
Yeah, and I will use across all the components. Right?
Mm-hmm. See, whatever I explain, they have written over here. Service is a broad category encompassing any value, function, feature, or the application needs. A service is typically class with a narrow and well-defined purpose. Component is one type of class that uses the DI. Angular distinguishes the components from the services from to modularity and the reusability by separating the components view related features. This diagram I explain components and the services. Presentation, data processing, pipes is the data formatting. So data presentation logic is written in components. Whatever kind of processing is not related to UI is written in the processes. That's what they have explained over here. Ideally, component job is to enable the user experience, nothing more. A component should present the properties and methods for the data binding to mediate between the view and the application logic. Component can delegate the certain tasks to the services such as the fetching data, validating user by defining such processing tasks in the injectable classes. That is the service. You can make those tasks available to any component. You can also make application more adaptable by configuring the different providers of the same kind of a service as the appropriate in the different circumstances. Angular does not enforce these principles. See, clearly stated. Angular helps you follow the principles by making it easy to factor your application logic into the services and make services available through the DI. It is not necessary to see, it is not necessary to make a name as service, right? This is not a service, but still it is injected over here. You don't need to name something as a service. The ABC is also a class which can be injected in other classes. This diagram, remember this diagram of Angular? And components are the directives. These are nothing but what the directives are. These are nothing but, we have seen there are three types of the directive: component, attribute, and structural. This is the one kind of directive. Okay, let's not do this code. First, I want you to clear the basic things that we have seen. This part. So ask me queries. You go through it tomorrow or whenever you get time and note down the queries and ask me the queries. Okay, let's conclude for the day. I have pushed the code now as well. If you want to check, you can check. You will get all the recordings by today about the services and other things. I will upload it. Fine. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask me.
Yeah, I will first look into that first code which you created with that car example and about that different services,
Correct.
different classes
Yeah.
created. First understand that.
Yeah, let me stop the recording.